Well, don't seem to have a big class today. Tell me how SketchUp is going along. You guys getting it? Easy, hard? Anything you're having struggle with? This is like one-on-one. They say the most successful classrooms have the best teacher to student ratio, and 1 to 2 is about as good as we're ever gonna get.
Well, I feel like it's really interesting and it's really fun. The only thing I'm having hard is like when you want to grab a component from some other, like when you download something from the warehouse and you just want a component of that one, it's really hard to just select that component because sometimes it gets like attached to something else, or I don't know how to select it or what.
Okay. Let me see if I can recreate the problem talking about. And it is tricky. The 3D warehouse has been around for 20 years. And so it has some good models and some bad models. And you'll find sometimes like that one of Core Hall was like from 2008 or something. And so it's just a really old model. So there was a way that things were modeled back then that they're not modeled today, that kind of thing. So let me try just opening a new SketchUp model. And so sometimes, yeah, you'll get like, oh, I want this car, but it'll be the car and a tree that's like 6 miles away from it, and you have to delete the tree. So the warehouse, there's some, I guess I should have warned you more about that. There's some hit and miss with the warehouse that can be. Do you know what model you were?
I was trying to get that emergency staircase from the Google Hall that I cut out.
Oh, from the old model?
But somehow it did not come as one component.
Okay, yeah, no,
I don't think what the other would always stick to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was telling you. So, so if you look at it, I click here. This is the whole thing all in one component, right? Including the ground. I click on it again, and now it's just the building as a component, right? So it's a separate component there. I click it again, and now it's what? It's the building minus those lines. And so I click on it yet again, and now it's just the faces. So they didn't build it the way we build it today, where you make a square and you make it a component, then you're making it square, right? This is more like everything is one big blob that's put together. So when I grabbed off this staircase, what I did was I got it to where I could select just the faces. And then I just grabbed that piece right there of the model. And then I did a copy of it. And then I got out of all the different components. And then I did a paste of that. And now just that piece came off. So I copied it when I was all the way in the model. So I just grabbed the faces by, if you remember, if you grab to the right, it's just going to grab the faces that are selected. If you grab to the left, it'll grab everything. But you grab and move the mouse to the right, you're just grabbing this stuff. And then Control C to copy it. And then I click out and close that whole component thing, and then Control V, I get it in there, and then I took it, and then I go back to my Core Hall model. I made it a component again at that point because I didn't want it to stick to the other stuff. So remember, if it's not a component, it'll stick to the other faces of the model. So I made it a component, and this is also a component. So it took me, and I probably had been using SketchUp for 2 or 3 years before I came to understand that they wanted everything to be a component. If you're not making components, everything it's like everything has got glue on it. It just sticks to everything else. So that's what happened there. And probably what I should have done also is like extruded it up. Good morning.
Good morning.
And our class size just increased 150%. Now it's gonna be a good day. So that's how I would do it. And you can do that with all sorts of things in the components. In fact, if you're like, let's say you want to use just have a dome shape or a sphere. It's really hard to make a sphere with what you have, with the tools that you have in here. And so what you can do, so over here, there is a components menu. I don't really use it very often, but it has a bunch of components in it that like a bed, a bench, some dude. And I think there used to be a sphere in here, but maybe they've moved it to the 3D warehouse. They kind of change things from time to time. No, they didn't. So, like if you want a sphere, you can do a search in here for the components. And what this is actually doing is just linking to the 3D warehouse, and you're pulling it off of the 3D warehouse. It looks like it's also squishing things in. So if I was to click, yeah, it looks like it even takes you to the 3D warehouse. We download it. But then let's say you didn't want a sphere, you wanted a dome. You'd have to open up that component, and you'll see it's just a sphere. So I want to cut this sphere in half, for example, and I can't do it because it's seeing it all as one shape. So we have in the view, there are a bunch of little options in here that can be really useful, and this is what today's lesson is about. So there's one called hidden geometry, and when you have the hidden geometry turned on, now you can grab the individual faces that make up the sphere, which you couldn't before. Until hidden geometry is on, you can't. It'll just select it all as one thing. And I use this the most often. We'll get to it when we're doing terrain. If I'm trying to move terrain around, that's when it's most useful, because terrain will come in with this too. So I turn on hidden geometry, and now I could go through and delete that whole bottom half of that sphere right there. And now I can put a dome. No, if we're building an observatory or a mosque or something on top, we could do something that has a dome. Traditionally, you could put it like that. But you could spend a long time trying to make a dome yourself and not do it. So that's why it's just a lot faster to do it with the 3D model, with the 3D warehouse. Okay, there's a couple other modes that we can do. If I go to the view, you can go to, under face style, you can go to X-ray mode, where now you're seeing through everything. And this can be really helpful for understanding where something is. I was pulling up earlier. So this is a house that I did up in Desert Mountain, and pretty complex, very, very complex house. You see I've got some notes on it here. I'll show you why. But it's also a really complex piece of terrain. It was on, has this big wash that's running down it right here on the terrain. And when I was working on the house, I had to, I knew we were gonna do some earthwork. There are gonna be bulldozers and excavators there. And so often I was turning on the hidden geometry, and this is what that terrain model is actually made of. These big complex models are all made of triangles everywhere. And you usually can't see it until you turn on the hidden geometry. But then I could go through and be like, okay, well, this little piece of terrain right here is supposed to go up to this point, right? Like you can go through and then you can edit all the little pieces of geometry, but you have to turn on hidden geometry to see them, right? And then I could say, like what I often use, so I use the model in, when I'm doing an initial design, I do it all in SketchUp. And then we'll build the actual plans in Revit, because that's what the contractors need to have, and that's what the city needs to have. I'm hoping there will be a day when you build your model and you give that model to the city and they okay it. And then the contractor just opens it up on a giant screen that he's got at the building site, and you just go from there, right? Currently, you do this weird thing where you design something in 3D, you make it 2D, so that the city can look at it and the builder can look at it, and then they make it back into 3D, and you're like, well, that was a strange language change that we did in the middle of the whole construction process. And same with planning. You're like, okay, well, we want people to walk from here to here and feel happy as they do it. And then you make it like this black and white drawing with some trees on it and a bench. And you're like, okay, now people are going to be happy as they move from here to here, right? Like there's this huge abstract thing that you do. So I'm hoping the day will come. And they're starting to. For example, Desert Mountain has a really powerful HOA, and getting this design through the HOA was almost as hard as getting it through the city of Scottsdale. Desert Mountain has traditionally, they're very, I don't know, kind of Tuscan revival standard, sort of your big McMansion style things. That's what's more common in there. But the submittal was this model, like this SketchUp model, and the HOA requires a SketchUp model of every building that goes into Desert Mountain, which I thought was great because I designed the model in SketchUp anyway. They used to require you to build a physical model, and you would submit that as part of your process. That's like a $10,000 to $20,000 model that would be built on this whole thing. You have to transport it in a box. It's this huge mess. So much easier to do it this way. But then when you get a really complex model like this, and you're trying to line things up or get things figured out, going to the X-ray version of the view just helps you understand it a lot better. And this house has a whole lot of details. This is my first big solo building, and so you're always like, oh, I've always wanted to do this since I was in college. And you put all these ideas in it, and then you realize why nobody does it, except people their first time out of college. But what we could do with this is you're seeing the air conditioning lines, the blue and the red. We were able to put the ductwork in. At least we're showing it here. We had to show it in other places too. The ductwork does some really weird things in this house. You can see it kind of cutting through here. Because the house is so weird, so the ductwork has to do all this weird stuff to get in there. And then you can also see this house, we designed even like the concrete deck. We extruded the concrete deck. We did all of the everything in there. So being able to switch to X-ray mode is really, really useful tool in SketchUp. So that's under the face style X-ray mode. But what I usually do, and another thing for today, is in the preferences. Okay, under window and preferences, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that isn't super important, but the shortcuts, these are your hotkeys that make it a whole lot faster to model. And I have a whole setup of hotkeys that I've been modifying it. So like currently, I think S is the scale tool, but I don't use the scale tool all that often when I'm modeling, so I've made S something else. X, I don't even know what X does, but I always go through, when I first get started, I'll go through to the preferences, the hotkeys, and I will find the X-ray thing here. And then you click right here at Add Shortcut, click the letter you want it to be, click this little plus sign. And now if I hit the letter X, that turns on and off my X-ray mode. And I don't have to go find it every single time. So I've picked probably the 10 or 15 hotkeys that I use the most often. And I've changed them around so they make more sense to how I did it, which is sort of how, because I learned 3D Max first. It's based off of 3D Max. So my way of doing it may not be the most efficient way of doing it, but does that. So also, like, I can get in the model, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at, I'm kind of lost. Sometimes you turn on the X-ray and it's a lot easier to move around inside of a big complicated model like this one. Oh, okay, that's where I am. Now I can. I was kind of trapped in the wall between the garage and the rest of the house. But then I used it also over here. I was trying to explain to the contractor what the ducts were supposed to be doing and the sizes of them. I'll get that in there. And so I put in a bunch of labels and just sent him screenshots of it, saying, hey, this is what's supposed to be going on right here. I think what we ended up having to do is we had to cut an additional space in the wall over here to get the ducts through. The ducts didn't work going through where they were supposed to happen, which happens quite often. You get something designed, and then there's almost as much design getting it built because this didn't work, that didn't work. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So I would make little things like this, just JPEG images. I would just do a screen capture of this and then send it to him and be like, okay, this has got to be 6'8" because these ducts are 20 inches. We need 2 inches of space between them and this big beam that's coming through here. And this was a whole lot easier to send them, and they were able to understand it better than a blueprint, right, than a construction document. So that's one of the ways that you're able to use SketchUp in a good way to explain something that's kind of hard to explain otherwise. You can see in here too, we didn't do this, but they were trying to, after we had it designed, we were trying to redesign it so that you could get to the air conditioning room from outside without coming into the house first. And so we were trying to get a staircase that would work in there, but staircases take up so much space. And we also had all these air conditioning pieces, these big air conditioner condensers inside that we had to deal with. So we ended up not doing that, but that's kind of a partway thing. So you have a model like this, and very, very complicated. It's got, I don't know, a couple dozen different materials on it. It has, how we switch from metal to concrete, all these things. I put these little fins on the end, which I thought would look super cool. Ended up being the biggest headache. They still look super cool, but the concrete forms are just not designed to taper to an end like that. And I don't think the concrete guy made money on it in the end. He didn't know how much extra work it was going to be, so he did his bid as if they weren't tapering, and then they tapered. It just became tricky that way. But that's a more complicated thing. Here's the jacuzzi originally was in the pool, and then they said, no, we want to be up above the pool. We don't want to be inside the pool. And so we had to kind of design this jacuzzi on the fly and make it make some sense. I still feel like it seems a little out of place, but that's because I knew how cool it looked originally. But that's the building. That's kind of the look I was going for. This is the first way you see it. You come around another house that's about a quarter mile up the road, and you see that, and it kind of got pretty close. Right? Like the colors are all a little bit different, but basically everything in the 3D model pretty close. You can see, what do you see? Like the ground form is a little bit different, how that all worked out, but that's a good. This one might be hard to recreate in the model, but had this look that I was going for. Yeah, kind of there. So those are some ways to use SketchUp, and some additional reasons why to switch to different face styles. And we can look at some of these others real quick, but those are also the hidden geometry, I think, is a really important one to know. Also, if you're trying to find something, so you can grab an object and you can hide it like this by right-clicking, clicking hide, and hiding it. That's not the way I prefer to do it. I usually want to put it on its own layer and then just turn that layer off. So you can see how sloppy I got towards the end. terrain is called stair structure number 3. I have no idea why. I know we redid this, designed the staircase a whole bunch of times, but I prefer to do it like this. So you can turn off, because you want the terrain off. If the model gets really complex like this, it'll slow down the model. So you want to be able to turn it off. You can grab it, right click and click hide. But if you get in the habit of doing that, a bunch of stuff will start disappearing and you don't know where it is until you go to view and you turn on hidden objects, and then you'll see kind of a gridded, ghosted version of it. Sometimes things will get lost and I have to do it like this, and then you can right click on it and unhide it. But the only way to see it again if you've hidden it is to turn on hidden objects. Okay. Couple more tools. I'm going to turn hidden geometry back off. There's a great tool called section planes. And you go under tools and it's called section plane. And what this will let me do, so it comes up, you see this kind of square. It's dancing around right now because it's trying to find a flat surface and map to that flat surface. So on the terrain, it's not a good idea, but I want to do some sections. I want to cut this building up like this to see what it's doing. So I'm going to pick that face. It'll say, call it section 11. And you're seeing here a bunch of the other sections that I've previously cut now that the section thing is off. But I can turn that section on. You need to make sure that you select the section that you're going to move, the selection plane, and you right click and make sure it says active cut. Otherwise, it's not going to do the cutting, which is what it's supposed to do. So it has to be the active cut. And then you can move it around and it's cutting through the building to show contractor, for example, this is what this, the shape of this opening is supposed to be. And this is the shape of this roof. And here's the shape of this bridge that's kind of coming across right through here. And here's how these all relate to each other. This model has a whole bunch of section cuts. You can see them here. You can make it so that you don't see the planes by going to view and turning off section planes. And now you don't see all those other lines cutting through there. Now you can explain it. So you can see I could make a diagram like this and show it to them to explain, okay, here's what the air conditioning ducts are doing and here's what's happening up above. So it can be a really helpful tool if you have a complex model like this one. But in order to move the section, you have to have the section plane turned on and you have to have the section selected. And then you just use the move tool, letter M, and you can cut a section through the whole thing. So this would be useful if we're using our core hall model. Turn off X-ray. That's not our model. This looks ours. Core hall, for example, has this whole walkthrough portion of it. It's underneath the building. So here I might go to tools, section plane, and maybe I want to talk about what it's like to be in this portion of the building over here. You know, maybe that little alley that I always take before I get on the elevator and come up to this class. So that can be a useful little tool, the section plane, like that. Talk about what's inside of it, what's going on. And you could even, like, it can be useful. You could say, okay, well, the building's doing this. Here's what the parking garage is doing over here. Let's say maybe you're designing and you want this space to be really nice. You can kind of focus in on it and say, okay, well, if you take away the rest of the building, this is what's happening right in here. So section plane tool is a very good tool for that. I'm going to turn it back off. Section cuts. If you turn off the section cuts, then you don't see them anymore. And these are all things you can have. So I was showing these scenes earlier. Scene 1 was this one. Scene 2 was this one. Scene 3 was this one. Now let's say that I want to do a section cut Turn on section planes and section cuts. And I click on that section cut, make it the active cut. Now I can say this is a scene. I'll add a scene 4. It says save it as a new style. That's what we want to do. And now I could go to the animation here. I'm going to change the settings. It's a 2-second transition right now, but if I was to make that, say, a 10-second transition, there we go. You can do an animation showing it cutting that section away, which is really good because most people don't understand what a section is through a building, right? Like it's really, really rare for someone to do that. But if you were to show them this, which you see all the time, anytime there's a documentary, they're like, oh, here's how this thing works. They always show them cutting the section and then you can talk about it. So in a presentation, even just a brief animation that shows this, it brings all your lay people that don't understand design very well into they're like, oh, okay, we're standing here. This is why you're showing this, blah, blah, blah. So it's good for that. And then you have to decide, currently we didn't build any of the floors of Quarter Hall, like this has all the floors in it. So you'd have to make a decision, are we gonna show all the floors? Do you need to mock up the floors? Do you need to make more sense to them? That's a challenge with that one. Okay, so now we've got scene 4 with sections. I'm gonna go back to scene 1. Another very useful tool that more and more municipalities are making us use. So now you see I've changed the animation to 10 seconds because I wanted that transition. But now if I'm going from scene to scene, it takes 10 seconds for each one of them, which is a pain in the neck. So I'm just gonna go back to the animation and change the settings. Usually when I'm working, I turn the scene transitions off completely. And then you're just jumping from scene to scene instead of having that little animation of jumping from scene to scene. So that's how we do that. I'm going to do a top view here. Now, so a similar thing, I use the top view a lot. I get these models so complicated, I have to jump to a top view. And so I often go to the preferences and the shortcuts, and I do the top view, and I had T be my shortcut. And it'll say, oh, but T is for tools and tape measure. Do you really want to assign it? Like I never use tape measure to measure something. I always just draw a line, because if you draw a line, it'll tell you how long it is. You don't need the tape measure tool at all. So yes, I want to reassign it. So I click T, and then I can be doing whatever I want. I get trapped. You know, you'll probably notice this. You probably had it where you're like trapped in the model. You can't figure out where you are. You're zooming in and out. It's like not going anywhere. And then you just hit T, and then it just jumps back up to the top view, and it's easier to find everything. Or you get stuck in the model. Again, with a really complex model like this, I'll often make a scene that is that top view. And when I click on that scene, I get back out. So if I go here to top view, get it lined up about where I'm working, add a scene, then I could be stuck in the middle of something with, you know, getting frustrated, scrolling, nothing's happening as I'm trying to get out. I just click scene 5, boom, it takes me right out. Okay, we're gonna talk about shadows and how to do a shadow study. This is something, again, that we're getting a lot more from municipalities. They wanna see what the shadow of the building is doing to the buildings around it. And SketchUp has some pretty great tools for that. I'm going to turn off the tags layer and go to the shadows layer. This is where you do all your programming for the shadows. The first thing to know, so you're seeing there are these really dark gray shadows, these opaque gray shadows. We're not seeing through them. And what I want to see is the shadows. I want to see what's getting hit by the shadow. So you turn off on ground. This little click here in the shadow menu right here. The reason the on-ground shadow command is there is, let's say you didn't have the ground and you wanted it to look like you did. On-ground makes a fake place for your shadows to land. So it's useful for that. If you're not building the terrain and you don't really care about the satellite photo or whatever, you can have the on-ground turned off for that. But if you are building the terrain, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like you'll see it in top view at this distance out, you can't see the terrain in there. If you zoom way in, you can, or it kind of skips a little bit, right? So when SketchUp it never knows what to do when two planes are exactly on top of each other. And that can be a real pain in the neck. And often, just because that's annoying to me, I'll bring the terrain in, you know, even if I bring in, like if you bring in survey data, it's at the exact height as well. So you'll bring in some survey data and it'll be 1,000 feet up in the air because it's at like, the contour lines are like at 1,005, 1,006, 1,007. So your model ends up being like way up here somewhere. And which is fine. You just get used to building it that way. In fact, this has these axes on it, the blue and the red and the green axes. Often I just turn them off. Once you kind of get used to how SketchUp works, the axes get a little annoying to have on there. And so you can turn them on and off as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go to this top view on scene 5. I'm gonna make sure my shadows tray is open here and turn off on ground. Now I'm gonna adjust just a little bit more. And for scene 5, let's say we're gonna do a shadow study. You usually pick one of the, like the equinox to show your most significant shadow study. So it's often, what, December 22nd, I think. And then you start it in the morning when the sun first rises. So I'm going to bring it's all calculated in 7:33 in the morning, 12:22, like that. And you can choose the different things. Does this let us pick our point? I used to do it. Let's see. Because you need to pick your latitude and longitude for it. And I used to do it by picking the location, but I think the new version doesn't let us pick the location. Add location extension. Okay. So there's an extension manager. Yeah, it's on there, dude. It wants me to update the add location. Okay. And probably is going to make me restart it. I'm going to save Core Hall. Turn this off. I'll reopen SketchUp. Okay. Now I'm going to go here to add location. Let's see if it lets you pick the location even if you're not bringing in the imagery, because the new one wants you to pay to do this. So let's see, we're at Core Hall. Don't want any offset for true north. Oh. All right, looks like hitting the keys. Doesn't like you to hit the keys. Okay. Let's see if this will let us. Right up here to where quarter hall is. Make our offset 0. Put a 0. And continue. And this is where I think it's gonna, like, you have to pay to do it as of like a month ago. Satellite photo or something. Yeah, it just doesn't do it. But maybe if you skip the import. Okay, so what it did do, I hit skip import. It looks like it did adjust the location of where we are in the world. So that gets our site shadows the right amount. So now I'm going to go to scene 5. I'm going to update it. Scene 5. And then I'm going to take the time from 7:33 a.m. to sunset at 5:20 p.m. And I'm going to add scene 6. Now, if I go back to the animation and take the settings and turn the scene transitions back on, when I move from scene 5 to scene 6, it'll do that whole shadow study for me. So then you can say to an HOA or to a municipality, you can say, yeah, this is what the shadows do on the equinox. This is when the shadows are the most extreme in the middle of winter, when they the longest shadows, the sun is the lowest in the sky. This is places that are going to get shade. Okay, and now to make the animation, so we've created it in here, but we need to export it as an animation. We're going to do, let me make it, I'll make it 20 seconds. It's a little bit longer for this animation. And now I'm going to go to export, and I'm going to export it as an animation. Right here, it'll go out as an MP4. I'll just have it go in the documents. Go to the options. The standard option is 720p HD. There's also 1080 HD. But what I prefer actually is 4K. 4K, what is the resolution? Which is 2060. 3840 by 2160. So I'll come into here and I'll change the resolution to custom. And I'll do 3840. It should switch to 2160 right in there. I had to click this little box to get it to switch. And 24 frames per second. I like that one. It also says loop to starting scene. I don't want to do that. That would mean it does the animation, then it goes back to the first frame. So I'm not going to loop to the starting scene. And I'm going to click OK. And click export. And now it'll start. It's going to do 24 frames per second. It's 20 seconds. It's got about 400 or so, 2,402 frames to calculate. And it's going to take 3 hours, only 2 hours. It's really dumb at estimating. I don't know what their estimated time is. It's kind of like when you're copying a file in Windows and it's like, oh, this is going to take 4 hours. And it says, well, actually, it's going to take about 8 seconds. Like it doesn't know very well at the very beginning. So this is going to take a really long time. I'm not going to run it through here. What I will do is I'll shrink it down just to show you what we get in the end. So come back to export. It's an animation. Oops. And file, export, animation, options. And I'm going to take it to 720 just so it goes quickly. And maybe I'll even take it down for a second. I'll export it. Now it should go pretty quickly. So it's going to take a couple minutes to do that. And then you can just, it'll just do that in the background. So I could switch to another model. And I can keep working on it. A couple other things we could do with our models. Turn off the section cuts and the section planes. So a model, which one was I doing? Oh, that was the core hall one. And we got, what, about 2.5 minutes left. So we've talked about tags. Tags are like layers. The styles are different ways of rendering the image. So the style that I work in the most is called architectural design, one of these pre-built styles. There are a bunch of other styles that you can use in your modeling. There are some, if you look in here, there's style builder winners, straight edges, sketchy edges. So for example, we could go to sketchy edges, and let's say that we wanted to show an image less photorealistic than this one. You can pick one of these other styles, and it turned on my section cuts, which I didn't want, and the section fill. Now I've got that house, and it's kind of weird because you could actually make an animation of it turning or the shadow study, but it's a very sketchy drawing of it. You could do a kind of a more blackboard sketch on here. It's going to keep turning on my section planes. So you could, if you were trying to show a very sketchy version of it, it does that for it. And this was SketchUp's one of the very first things. It's like, oh yeah, look, we can make your model look like you just sketched it on a napkin. That was what their ads were all about when they first came out. But really, really great. It's a lot of time to build the model, but once you've built it, you're able to turn it and do all this stuff with it. So those are some different versions like that. There are some other ones, the style builders. You can see just how creative they can get. This one's got some splotches in it, like it's a watercolor. And this one even has it, like when you export it, it has this kind of frame built around it that you can use. So those are the different styles. There's also, let's see, there's this new thing. This is a newer thing in SketchUp. It's called ambient occlusion. And what the ambient occlusion does is it kind of fakes shadows on it. So let me turn these section planes back off again, these cuts. And you'll see, so the ambient occlusion, when it's turned on, it's making kind of a little shadow where things get close together. And you can kind of see it in here. So it softens the whole thing up. You can edit your these styles in here. You go to the edit menu, and then there are these 5 different places you can edit it. So ambient occlusion is in the face menu. If you turn it off, you see the difference. This makes these little soft shadows that are right at the corner of everything. And we could turn our regular shadows on as well and get it past noon, or get it in the morning so you see it. And you can see the difference, ambient occlusion being on or off. It doesn't take a whole lot more rendering power, but it really makes the model look a lot more realistic in a way. So it's a very useful thing to have on for that. You can also edit all sorts of things in it. So if you wanted it to look sketchy yourself, you can. You can have it so that if you turn the extension on, then you'll see it. It makes the lines pass each other, which is the way architects like to draw, where everything ends in a little, no lines meet each other, they all pass by a little bit. Turn that off and on, you see what that does. It also handily adds spines to the cactus if you're doing a cactus. Does that. You can also have an endpoint where it'll put a little dot. It'll thicken up right there on the end, which again is sort of an old drafting technique. You can even turn on a depth cue where the lines will get smaller the farther away they get. Let's see if I can illustrate that in a good way. I think for the depth cue, you have to edit the, let's see, you need to turn on one of these different, no, it's not that one of these different trays. Obviously, I don't ever use it, so I don't remember how to do it. But that'll give you thicker lines closer up and back. You can turn on the back edges, which is showing everything that's behind it, but kind of hatched up a little bit. That might be more useful in a smaller model, like the core hall model. Let's say we had this view. Oh, it's going to take forever to get there. So if we go back now to the scenes, sorry, not the scenes, we're in the styles. And we were doing ambient occlusion, and I think we picked this one. So like that, and we're editing that. Sometimes having the back edges on, it's just a little handy. You can visualize, oh yeah, there's some stuff going on here. Again, it can be a useful tool for helping to visualize what's going on there with the back edges. So that's ambient occlusion on versus off. You can also go through, you're working with these scenes. Let's see what this one does. There's like a dark, sketchy version of the pen, like that. This is just a more photorealistic thing. Put that on there. Then go through and you can change the thing I use the most often. Okay, so the sky color is the one that I do a lot. If I want the sky to be, usually when I'm doing a 3D rendering, I want the sky to be like really cyan and happy. And so I'll have the sky. I'll mess with the sky quite often in this. Actually, I'll mess with the sky in this, but usually I'll take it into Photoshop afterward and put my own sky in the background, the way we did that with Photoshop, changing the background sky. That's the most common way that I do it. But you have these different options in the styles, and if you mess with the various styles, you can see how they did it. One that I really like, and that clients tend to really like, it's this one right here, which gives it sort of a, it's a good sketchy feel, but it still has a good, strong image to it. But this one too, I'll usually go through and I'll make, they're trying to make it look like it's on some sort of poster board or cardboard paper. I'll usually go through and I'll give it a real sky. And let's turn off that background. I want the sky to be. Oh, so this has got some sort of overlay on it. Yeah, so the way they're doing this is they have a masonite frame that's sitting in there covering everything. I could probably delete it. Yeah, so now I've taken off that background piece, which is, it's trying to make it look like you've drawn it on a piece of cardboard. So I took that off, and now my sky should be on there. The sky will have this little blend to it. If you're gonna knock the sky out later in Photoshop, turn the sky off and just have a straight background color. And you could even just go like pure white with your background color. Makes it a lot easier to knock it out later on. For this one, the texture is really great, but if you're going to knock this texture out in Photoshop later, you'd probably want to turn that texture off for it. But this is a good. People like this one. This one feels good. It feels sketchy enough and it feels photographic enough that it's a really good one. You can see in some of the ones here, when they make it look, they're trying to make it photorealistic, but not really. And so it just doesn't look quite right with some of these. Like this one, for example, it's even supposed to be in an art museum. I would have recommended putting one of those filters on so that it looks a little more art-ish and a little less computer graphic-ish. So, good thing for that. And then still within it, you can change, shadows can still be changed. You can do all the different things in it. But then I would save this one. So I'm going to save it as a new style. Yes, and create the scene. So now scene 7 is like that, and scene 2 is the old version. So I have both options. So it's good. I'll have that one at the Higbee's house. I took him away. There was a point when this had about 300 scenes in it, just all these different things that I was trying to show everyone. So you can have a whole lot of different scenes that get really complex as you're doing that. Okay, let's see how our movie turned out. This one right here. Oh, you know what I did wrong? Okay, so I did the movie of the entire thing. I was hoping just to do this part. And I forgot to turn off that's why it took so long. It was rendering the entire movie out. So, this is taking 20 seconds going from every scene that I had to every scene that I had. You can turn off the scenes. That's what I forgot to do. So this would still be nice. I could make a movie like this. And sometimes I'll render all of it at once and then just come back in and Premiere or some other Windows Movie Maker or something like that and chop it into pieces and build it afterward. So let's switch that. Actually, I think you can do it in YouTube now. So if I was to go to YouTube Maker, and so I've got an account on YouTube. I'm going to go to the YouTube Studio right here, and I want to, so up in here, it's the create button right up in here. I want to create content. I'm going to go to upload videos. I'm going to go to the documents. Got my Core Hall video thing. I'm going to bring it down in here. Take it a little bit to upload, and it's going to process it here. This is my link now to YouTube. This is how easy it is to put something on YouTube. Your generation probably does it all the time, but just in case, this is how to do it. So it's going to process the video. It's going to run it through a couple filters. It's called Core Hall. You can give it some different things down in here, and then you have to make it. You have to tell it, yes, it's made for kids. It's just one of the elements to it. Otherwise, it won't let you do it. But if you start using SketchUp to make stuff that's not for kids, then click no, it's not made for kids. I don't know that there's a lot of adult-only SketchUp content out there, but if you get on the warehouse, if you've been wandering on the warehouse, you'll run into some weird stuff on there. Just FYI. Video elements, you can do all of this. You can add card subtitles. Pretty great element. And seems like, well, I'm just gonna do the whole thing. I'm gonna upload the whole thing just to show you how it works. Then typically I will make them either unlisted or private. A lot of times what I'm doing is someone's private residence. I don't want anyone on YouTube to be able to find it. Not that I think anyone could if they were looking for it. When we were doing houses for the Seinfelds and Jay-Z and stuff, we had to be super cautious about that kind of stuff. I don't have anyone that famous out here that has to do it, but you just have to be cautious. If you were doing an ASU building, or we've got a air base that we're working on right now, we're definitely not going to have that there. So that's when you'd have it private. Unlisted also works. And if you're going to be a YouTube creator, you can make it public and with that too. So I'm going to upload this here, and then it brings all these links up. Close that. It should pop up in here. And then once you've got it up, you can click on it and come to the editor. And here's where I could edit out. If I want to just show that shadow study, I'm going to crop out everything until it starts right here. Trim and cut. Drag this bar over to here. So this is YouTube video editing software, which is getting better and better every year. Bring that there, and I think I clipped this probably. Go to the end. Do that. Okay, so now it should be that this video, oh, they have a length of video rule. Okay, so I'll have to adjust for that. Trash cut one. Maybe it's good to say, okay, we're going to start right here. Show it. Okay, so now my video is going to just be this is video too short. Save that. So it looks like there's a limit to how short your videos can be. Now it's going to process it. It's going to run through its service. It's going to do it. The other handy thing to add is you can add music pretty easily to it. This might not give us time to see it. So I'm going to jump back to the content and just show you, let's see. This is this, oh yeah, so I've already added the music. That's the actual link, which will open it up in real YouTube. I think I was going to do this model the other day. So you can see what that looks like. But you do that in the editor under audio. It has all of these different free audio things in here. And that's where I think I told you I had this client. He's like, hey, can you do some concept for this house? I want it along the canal. It was these 3 houses, and it was going to have this canal and this river and everything. And it took me maybe 2 or 3 hours to do it. I put it on YouTube and I put the music to it. And when we presented, he was like, I thought you were going to come with a sketch. Like, you've got like a full 3D rendering of us walking along I might have it here somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, it's this one. I won't show you the whole thing, but it just kind of pans through this whole house design. And it's what, a minute, but it's a really slow camera move. And then I put on some jazz music because I knew he liked jazz. So you can press something pretty quickly like that. So if we come back to here, where were we editing that music?
SketchUp, this video.
That one was this one. This is SketchUp. This one was Twinmotion. And I'm hoping I can get Twinmotion installed on here and I can show it to you. Because it's pretty easy to take it into Twinmotion and it really looks amazing in Twinmotion. SketchUp, you can get some decent render, like this, it's not terrible, but Twinmotion, like there could be fountains going and the trees will be waving in the wind and people will be talking to each other. I think I showed you some of the ones we've done with that. Anyway, so you click on the editor, you click on the audio, and then there's a bunch of different, like if you want that kind of music, I don't recommend that for a client.
Do you prefer Twinmotion or Lumion?
I learned Twinmotion, so I prefer Twinmotion. A lot of the landscape architects we work with use Lumion. And we've got a new interior designer in our office that knows Lumion. Lumion seems, they're both getting really good. Lumion seems to really know how to make the light look fantastic no matter what. Twinmotion has incredible ability to, well, I think Lumion too, you can just bring in a tree that's already animated, right? Doesn't Lumion have that too? Yeah, so as I've seen them, they look pretty similar in ability. It's probably like whichever one you can get for cheaper. Once you're professional, you have to pay for one of them. So pick some music. I usually try to do some kind of chill, soft jazz or something, depending on the client, right? This guy is in his mid-30s, multimillionaire. So it's got to sound kind of hip and groovy like that. This guy is turning 70. And so I was going for more kind of an older jazz style thing for him. So that's just client relations. Just be thinking that through. Not everyone's going to want whatever techno music you grew up listening to, like pounding in the background when you're showing your stuff. So that is that. So that, let's see if we finished our core hall. Okay, so it's in there like that. Now I can go to the editor. I'm going to add audio. And seems like a college campus sort of music. Okay, and then I think you just click add right here. This is the track, and you can actually, if you can get into it, you can scoot the track around so that it will line up different amounts at different times with the thing. But now, this is what what happened in that scene is there? Here's our cut coming through. And let me see, why did the shadows not change? Zero, equal this, 10 seconds. And then the scenes tab is over here. What I actually want to do, just scene 5 to scene 6 is this shadow study that we did. You'll see it's not animating the shadows right now. That's because I had this video player up, so it's been spending all this energy on that. So sometimes you won't see the shadows changing. You just have to know that they're doing it in the background. And I'm going to come over here to these scenes and scroll down here to this. Okay, so you click this little button right here, and that brings up your scene attributes. So now I can say, like, scene 1, I don't want it included in the animation. And 2, and 3, and 4, I don't. And scene 7, I don't. So now the animation is just going to go from scene 5 to scene 6, which is the one that I did the core hall. Now I should go pretty quick because now it's only. So you have to turn off. That's what I did wrong the first time. I forgot to turn off include in animation. There's a lot of that in working in SketchUp because there's 20,000 things you can do. You're like, oh, dang it, I forgot to do this thing. And you have to run it again. But luckily, it does a whole lot of it in the background. So. This, we should have core hall shadow study. Now that should just be. Huh, it's not moving the shadows either. Okay, so I've got to figure out. We turn the shadows off for one of them. Turn on ground back on. And they're moving now. And there. Let's try it one more time. Sometimes it glitches. Looks like we're getting a glitch. No, it's not animating the shadows. Okay, so I've got to figure out why that's not working. And I will do that on Monday. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just one question. I feel like I was having maybe a silly issue, but trying to change the color of a texture of like concrete just like a little bit, I could only use that like color wheel. And I feel like it'd be way easier if I had like the sliders or something.
Yeah, so you can get that with, if I bring that up and go to edit. So it says color wheel right here. You can switch it to RGB sliders.
Okay, I just wasn't paying enough attention.
Yeah, well, you just don't know. Like in SketchUp, keep an eye out for these little super, super tiny triangles. That means that there's some other options below them. It's so like, it's like, dude, just make a big triangle, like make it super obvious. There's some options there. You could totally do it. But yeah, you've got your RGB sliders in there, which make it a whole lot easier to do that. Cool. Anything else? All right. We will, Monday, I'll get this video thing figured out. Hopefully I can show you some twin motion, and we'll get a little more nitty gritty in subways, like not subways, but light rail, streetcar specific 3D modeling. Okay, have a great day.
This Monday or holiday?
Oh, is that our Veterans Day? Wednesday. We'll see you on Wednesday. Do not come here on Monday. Unless you want, unless you want to just do SketchUp, do your day off. It can get very therapeutic.